guys, and welcome back to the Yes Means Yes podcast. This week we have a special guest on from Lee County DHR, Katie Morgan. As you guys know, my name is Faith Namchef. I'm a victim advocate and outreach coordinator with rape counselors. And I'm going to let Amanda introduce herself as usual, and then I will have Katie kind of talk about like what she does at Lee County.
Hey guys, I'm Amanda Carpenter, and I'm also with RCEA. I'm a victim advocate, and I'm also the outreach specialist. And I will now let Katie introduce herself.
My name is Katie Morgan. I'm a social worker with Lee County DHR, and I've been there for about, 2 years now. Actually, it's been officially 2 years. And I work in the CAN unit, which is the Child Abuse and Neglect Division. We investigate the reports that come in for allegations of child abuse and neglect.
Awesome. Okay, so I know you said that you are in the abuse and neglect unit. How often would you say that you deal with instances of child sexual abuse cases?
It kind of varies. I know they come in fairly regular to the department, but there's about 8 of us CAN workers, and it gets divided up with each other. And so I don't know exactly how many goes to each other worker. But I would say on my caseload right now, I have about six to seven involving sexual abuse.
So for anyone who's not familiar, in DHR, what age group do you work with? Like, that would be reported to you.
It'll be from birth to 19 years old. They actually just increased it to 19 from 18.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. I'm glad that you told us that because we were always interesting. That's going to make it so much fun with the college students now.
Yes.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So now that we're like kind of in COVID and everything, would you say that you've seen a decrease in your cases or an increase, especially in the sexual abuse cases?
Actually, I haven't really noticed any change. I honestly haven't had, as far as my caseload coming in for myself personally, I haven't had very many sexual abuse cases come in since COVID. But I know other workers are still continuing to get them. So I would say, honestly, there really hasn't been a change. It's fairly steady, unfortunately. So
it's unfortunate, but then on the other hand, I would say for us, our numbers have drastically decreased. And we don't really think it's because the assaults are not happening. I think it's people are afraid to go to the hospital.
Right.
I'm glad that you're feeling like they can still be reporting.
So,
Yes.
Katie, do you think that possibly once if school does open up again, do you think that there will be a rise in numbers because the teachers and other mandated reporters will actually have access to those children that they don't have access to right now?
I do. Our numbers do go up significantly with reports when school's back in session, and I do believe we will have more of an increase in sexual abuse. And then also once counseling sessions get more involved as far as one-on-one, right now a lot of counselors are still meeting over the phone, and I think sometimes people aren't as comfortable to make a disclosure like that, depending on where they are, if they're at home or something. And I think once people are more one-on-one back with their counselors, that there will be more disclosures as well.
Would you say that teachers are your number one reporter that report sexual abuse cases, sexual assault cases?
No, actually, I believe counselors, mental health counselors would be our number one.
Okay.
Because if they make a disclosure during counseling, then they have to, they're mandated reporters and they have to disclose it to us.
Gotcha.
So when you work with like any sexual abuse cases, are there some like common red flags you've seen or see, or is there anything like specific that you always look for? Kind of like a telltale sign or warning signs? Like if something else is going on, but then you come into the situation, is there anything that you can kind of see to be like, that might be telling of a sexual abuse?
Typically, behaviors. If there's an increase in behaviors, outbursts, change in routines for younger kids. I know a lot of times they'll start having accidents again, like wetting themselves at night, wanting to be close to their mom, depending on the situation, like what's going on at home. and then with older kids, cutting themselves.
Okay. So based on like what you said, it goes up to 19 now. Would you say that you see more like teenagers having like reports come in of like sexual assault or sexual abuse cases, or would you say you see more children?
I would say a lot of times for me lately, it has been children who are 12 to 15 years old, but the abuse started back when they were like 5 or 6, and then they have just disclosed it in counseling. So it appears that most of them, it happens when they're younger.
Okay.
But I know it's not just limited to that. So.
Right, of course. So when you've had like maybe in like younger children, so we go in for anyone who's listening to this podcast and doesn't really familiar with us, we go and teach something called Aaron's Law to K through 12, and this is for the young kids. We talk about stranger danger, good touch, bad touch, not letting like adults see or touch your private parts, not keeping secrets with adults, just like being aware of childhood sexual abuse. But then for older kids, we talk about like safe dating, healthy relationships. When you have had a child like come in, have they ever like mentioned knowing the report because of Aaron's Law, because they had heard it in school, or is it mostly like kind of like an adult stepped in?
Yeah, a lot of the kids that I've been talking to lately, because I try to ask a lot of kids that when I have any contact with them, whether it's something just dropped on my head. Whether it's neglect or a concern, I always try to go over good touch, bad touch, and I'll always ask them, have you heard that before? And a lot of them haven't, even the school-age children. And as the kids get a little older, once you kind of explain rules of your body, like first they look at you like, oh, I've never heard of that. And then a lot of times, they just say they're kind of aware of it from their parents or something. So.
Okay.
I've actually never heard of that Aaron's Law. So.
Oh, yes. So Aaron's Law, it's actually mandated in the state of Alabama that K through 12 has that education in their school systems. It's not mandated in every state yet, but they're working towards it. I think it's been like presented in every state, so it will probably.
Okay. Neat. I learned that too.
Yes, it's a good. It's something that we do, and I think we enjoy doing. And we always have like teachers come up to us and be like, my kid this, something like that. Like they didn't know this was okay, but they thought this was okay. It's just something you don't think about sometimes, right. Or it's uncomfortable to talk to your children. So we're definitely glad to be able to go in and do that. But so kind of like going off of that, do you think that as a community that we have enough resources for those that report to DHR that they've been assaulted? Like, I know we have us, but do you think that we could have more resources in the community, especially for like the populations that you deal with?
I think if there could be more resources, like Lee County is a very huge county. I never realized that until actually driving in it and going into it. But I feel like there needs to be more resources further up towards like Phoenix City, Smith Station, that area. Because again, you have people who live in rural communities. Transportation is difficult to get to Opelika, to mental health, or things like that. So I do think there's always a benefit to having more resources, especially mental health, counseling, and advocates like that.
Mm-hmm. You touched on advocates. Do you think that if a DHR worker and like their client, the child or teenager they're working with, do you think it would benefit them to have a victim advocate there if it was a sexual abuse or sexual assault case?
Oh, yes. I think so.
Have you ever, I believe, is it Twin Cedars, the child advocacy?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Have y'all ever been able, do you work with them often?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you that time.
You're fine. So when we have someone usually under the age of 14, we won't do the kids in hospital when they have a rape kit done. We'll send them to leaders. So I'm guessing y'all work a good bit with them and
Yes, we work very closely with them. And when we do a forensic interview, we actually go over there and sit in and observe that interview as well with law enforcement, depending on which county it was in. You have Lee County Sheriff, Auburn, Opelika. And then once we finish the interview, they will be linked with an advocate there at the center. And we do recommend counseling to everyone who comes through there as well. So we work very closely with Twin Cedars. So.
Yeah, definitely. So do you think there's anything like as a community that we can do as like a bystander or anything in particular you would want a community member to know when they are stepping in as a bystander to help you like reporting wise or just things to look for? Like in what ways could we as a community assist getting better reporting? Because I know that DHR reporting just in general is a little bit hazy. We train our college volunteers all the time about mandated reporting, and the 18-year-olds, now apparently 19-year-olds, it always gets a little fuzzy there. And then it also becomes, well, what if someone who was a friend or saw me as a friend reported or disclosed something to me and I wasn't in this role, but I'm still this mandated reporter? It just always gets so fuzzy. So I guess in your standpoint, I always kind of go with I would rather tell DHR and someone look into it and
Right.
and have nothing else like worse or something happen than to be like, oh, well, it was disclosed as a friend, so I don't want them to get upset with me, if that makes sense. So what would you kind of say to an average community member?
That's tough because I also think counselors have it tough because I've had several young girls talk to me about they want to go into counseling and disclose and share these things, but they have no intention of pursuing anything. But unfortunately, once they make that disclosure, then they're mandated to report it to us, and then we kind of get involved. And especially if it happened years and years ago, it's really hard and actually difficult on that child, that teen, and a lot of times they don't want to do anything with it. So my thing is talking to children when they're younger, making, I don't know, I think adults, parents, teachers, and whoever needs to have more conversations with these children about it. It's okay to talk to us about it. Because when it gets older, it becomes more difficult for people, especially if you're a peer, a friend, and they say, don't tell anyone. Well, if you're not familiar with being a mandated reporter, then you're more than likely to keep that secret for that person. So then it does fall more on a teacher or a counselor. So I think the biggest thing that people need is to be able to talk with children when they're younger and finding ways to communicate, reach out to them, especially when they come back from friends' houses. Instead of asking, and I've read an article on this a long time ago, but it's true. I have an 11-year-old, and just instead of saying, were you good? Did you behave? Did you do everything you're supposed to? Ask them, did you feel comfortable? Finding out, of course, who's there, but making sure that they felt comfortable where they were and who they were with is very important. And I think sometimes people need to remember is, especially in the South, having young kids go and hug all these strangers or family members that they may not feel comfortable with, and just kind of observing their behaviors around certain adults and friends sometimes can be a big indicator on how they feel. So,
yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think we might have seen like a similar article or something because I've always read the don't make them sit on Santa Claus lap if they don't want to, because we're
right.
very big on like teaching consent and even like starting that in an early age, teaching them that their body is their body and that they get to decide what happens to it. So if you're telling them to sit on Santa's lap, then you're not really taking their no for a no. They're saying, oh, your no doesn't matter because you're young and I'm your parent. But yeah, I like that. I think definitely opening the communication channels with children and allowing them to speak to you would be great.
Because a lot of times the kids who there are issues, there's having issues because there's behaviors. And so then once those kids are kind of put in counseling to manage those behaviors, that's when sometimes you'll find out there is a history of abuse. So it's also important for teachers to be observant of certain behaviors as well. But, just kind of educating community members what to look for. And then I think something that'd be very hard would be approaching parents about it if you have a concern, because everyone is so afraid about judging one another and getting in each other's business. But I'm learning sometimes you kind of have to. Sometimes you got to push that boundary of being uncomfortable, and just when you're doing it out of care and being genuine, I think that people will respond to that, hopefully positively.
Yeah. So that's really kind of all we have for you. We just have like one more question that we always like to end the podcast with. Okay. So what do you have to say to victims of sexual assault? And I guess more in this case, victims of child sexual abuse, whether in the past or in more recent instances, like, do you have a message for them, words of support, anything you would want them to know?
Basically that you're not alone, that this happens to more people than you would think, boys and girls alike. It is not just girls that this happens to, and to reach out, and whether is a peer, a friend, an adult, but make sure that you talk to someone about it. That is the most important thing. Holding something in does not make it go away, does not make it better. And we are here to help. There are resources in our community. We do have a great community for this because of the university, because of Twin Cedars, and our great law enforcement. There are people who want to help. And but the biggest thing is just finding your voice. And in a day and age where that is being it's being stressed and pushed more, I think kids are finding their voice through TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever social media platform they're using. I do believe it is important to reach out and to find your voice. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Katie. It was great to have you on, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Katie. Bye.